Are you looking for a quick and easy recipe for crisp chaklis? Then this is it. This is an instant pohe chakli recipe. And in this video, I'll show you how to make instant rice flour chaklis with pohe without the hassle of preparing bhazani, the multigrain chakli flour. Hey there, this is Veena from Pare. A warm welcome to my channel. And if you're looking for authentic ingredient proportions and all the essential instructions for getting a recipe right, you've come to the right place. If you're new to making chaklis, then I have all the tips you'll need for getting the recipe right. So watch the video carefully to the end. If you follow all my instructions, the chaklis will neither disintegrate in the oil while frying them, nor soak up oil, and they won't become hard either. Now let's look at the main ingredients. We'll need 1.5 cups of rice flour, 1 cup of thick pohe, the same kind of pohe used for making breakfast kanda pohe, and half a cup of split roasted gram. You could also use skinned, intact roasted gram instead. The volume will remain the same. The first thing we'll do is lightly roast the pohe on medium heat. We'll roast it for around 2 to 3 minutes without letting it change color. We just want to make it a little crisp so we can grind it easily to a fine flour. This is done. We'll now let it cool completely. Next, we'll transfer the pohe and the split roasted gram to a grinder jar. I'll grind this and be back. Here's the ground mix. It's nice and fine. Let's now sift the rice flour into a parat or a shallow wide bowl. Sifting this flour is optional. But you absolutely have to sift the mix of ground pohe and split gram to remove any bits of pohe or gram that have not been ground. Discard any grainy material left behind. Let's give this a rough mix. And then add in some seasonings, some spices to it. We'll add a 1/4 teaspoon of hing or asafoetida, half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. Oh, I just realized I had used a half teaspoon measure by mistake and therefore added just 1 teaspoon of the ground cumin. So I'm now adding the remaining 1 teaspoon to make it 2 teaspoons of ground cumin in all. Next, we'll add 2 teaspoons of coriander powder, 1 teaspoon of ajwain or carom seeds. I'll rub this between my palms before adding it to release its full flavor. 1.5 tablespoons of chilli powder, 1.5 tablespoons of sesame seeds, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt to begin with. Let's mix everything. And then add in an important ingredient, 3 tablespoons of very hot melted pure ghee. You could also add 3 tablespoons of hot oil instead. I'll mix it in with a spoon first. And then rub it into the mixture with my hands to make sure it's well distributed in the flour mixture. The proportion of oil or ghee is critical in this recipe. If you add more of it than necessary, the chaklis will disintegrate in the oil when you start frying them. Next, we'll add the second important ingredient, 1.5 cups of boiling hot water. Let's mix everything with a spoon to make a shaggy dough. Now let's cover it and set it aside for 10 minutes. It's now time to knead the chakli dough, adding in as much room temperature water as needed. Here I have half a cup of water. We need a medium soft dough to make chaklis. It shouldn't be hard, and neither should it be too soft and sticky. I used up all the water and then added an additional 2 tablespoons to prepare this dough. The exact quantity of water needed, however, will depend on the variety of rice from which your rice flour is made. So you might need a little more or a little less water than I'm using today. If you're new to chakli making, it could be difficult for you to understand the exact texture of the chakli dough. But once you start making chaklis, you'll have a better idea of this. However, I'll tell you how to check the texture of the dough a little later in this video. Let's taste the dough now for salt. The taste is just right. No need to add any extra salt. We'll now cover and rest the dough for around 10 minutes. The dough shouldn't be as hard as puri dough, but should be soft enough to press into it very easily. At the same time, it shouldn't be sticky. Next, we'll grease the chakli press with oil. We'll grease the inside of the cylinder, the star disc, and the bottom of the central rod. If you want to buy a chakli press, I've put a link in the description box. Let's knead a portion of the dough to see that it is smooth and has no air gaps. Any air gaps in the dough could lead to the chakli strand breaking. Let's give this bit of dough a cylindrical shape. And then insert it into the cylinder of the chakli press. Let's press it down inside. And then set up the chakli press. If you're making chaklis for the first time, I suggest you fill just 1/3 of the cylinder to begin with, so that you can check if the texture of your dough is just right. Here I have a few squares of parchment paper on which I'll press out the chaklis. You could also use lightly greased small steel lids for this instead. I'll now press out the first chakli. This needs a little practice, for you have to press the chakli out in tight swirls without any gap between the rounds. And then press the end of the chakli strand into the previous round to seal the chakli and ensure it won't unravel when it's being fried. It is while pressing out the chaklis that you can test the texture of the dough. If you find it needs more force to press it out, or the strand is stiff and keeps breaking, it indicates your dough is too hard and you need to add 1 or 2 tablespoons more of water to it. But if the strand is too limp and smooth and does not show the distinct and characteristic spikes on it, it means the dough is too loose and you need to add a little more rice flour to it to make it firmer. Only once you get the texture right, you should move on to the next step of frying the chaklis. With the flame on medium, I've started heating the oil for deep frying the chaklis. Let's test if it's hot enough by dropping a small piece of dough into it. If it rises to the top in a few seconds, the oil is hot enough. If you're not comfortable about adding the chaklis to the oil directly with your hand, here's what you can do. Invert the perforated spoon on a chakli. Flip it over and transfer the chakli to it from the paper. And then gently release it into the oil. like this. See that you fry only a few chaklis at a time without overcrowding the kadai. Also, my kadai has a curved bottom, but it would be better to use one with a flatter and broader base. Don't disturb the chaklis for the first 1 to 1.5 minutes because they are delicate in the beginning. But after they firm up a little and their shape has set, carefully flip them over. If you find the chaklis are browning too fast, reduce the heat to medium-low for some time. The chaklis will need to be fried for less than 2 minutes on the other side. When they are done, the bubbles will reduce a little and the chaklis will sink a bit below the level of the oil. A gentle reminder to please like this video if you find it useful and subscribe for more tasty recipes like this. Let's remove these to a bowl lined with an absorbent kitchen paper towel. I needed around 4 minutes to fry this batch. I'll continue frying the rest of the chaklis. And set them to drain in the bowl lined with the paper towel. The chaklis will become even crisper and darker as they cool down, for even after removing them from the oil, they'll continue to get fried due to the residual heat inside them. I made 27 chaklis today. If you get the texture of the dough right, you can rest assured your chaklis will turn out great. When they've cooled down completely, they can be stored for over a month in an airtight container. Our chaklis have distinct spikes and a nice round shape, and they are not oily at all. But let me show you how crisp they are. See how easy it is to crush one. And now I'll taste the chakli. So listen to this. Nice and crunchy. Hope you liked today's video. Do give my recipe a shot. But remember to follow all my tips, okay? And I suggest you also check out my other chakli recipe for another interesting variation. Bye for now, and till we meet again, happy cooking!